The red spray paint was still dripping when I unlocked my apartment door. At first, I thought someone had vandalized the wrong place. But then I saw the words stretched across my living room wall in messy, uneven letters. Thanks for the free ride. My stomach dropped. The TV was gone. My laptop, too. My grandmother's ring. The emergency cash hidden in the laundry drawer. Even the old silver watch my uncle gave me after college. Gone. And standing in the middle of that empty apartment, I realized the person who robbed me wasn't a stranger. It was my nephew. My name is Naomi, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me for a second. Have you ever opened your home to someone out of love, only to watch them walk away with pieces of your life like they meant nothing? Because that's exactly what happened to me. 3 months earlier, my older sister called late one night. Her voice was shaky, exhausted, heavy with regret. She'd relapsed again and was checking into rehab. Naomi, she whispered, please, just until I get clean. Rico needs somewhere safe. Rico was 17, angry at the world, quiet in that dangerous kind of way where you never really know what someone's thinking. But he was family, so I said yes, without hesitation. I cleaned out the guest room, bought extra groceries, drove him to job interviews, even got him a part-time position at a friend's auto shop. At first, he seemed grateful. He helped carry groceries, called me Aunt N, sat at the kitchen counter while I cooked dinner, and actually said thank you. I wanted to believe this was his turning point. But slowly, things shifted. The smiles faded. He stayed out late, started locking his bedroom door, got secretive with his phone. Still, I defended him. Teenagers are complicated, I told my friends. Trauma takes time. I kept giving chance after chance because that's what family does, right? Until the night I came home and found my apartment stripped clean. And somehow, the missing things hurt less than the message on the wall, because that sentence told me everything. He hadn't just stolen from me. He laughed while doing it. That night, I sat on the floor surrounded by empty shelves and broken trust. I should have cried. Instead, I laughed quietly into the silence because if I didn't laugh, I knew I'd break. But here's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you exactly where your boundaries should have been. The next morning, I didn't panic. I got organized. I pulled together receipts, screenshots, hallway security footage, pawn shop records, and messages. Every missing item, every suspicious withdrawal, every lie. Then I walked into Rico's school with a folder thick enough to tell the whole story. I wasn't angry anymore. I was prepared. When Rico walked into the vice principal's office and saw me sitting there, his confidence vanished instantly. Aunt N, he muttered. Sit down, I said calmly. I laid every document across the table one by one. This is the footage of you leaving my apartment with my bags. This is the record of stolen property. And this, I added softly, is proof that I gave you everything I could. He couldn't even look at me. The vice principal asked if the accusations were true. Rico stayed silent. And honestly, that silence said more than any apology could have. I looked at him carefully and said the only thing that mattered. You didn't just rob my apartment. You robbed the one person who would have fought for you. For the first time, his face cracked with shame. But I was done rescuing people who confused kindness with weakness. When I left that school, I made a promise to myself. No more saving people at the cost of losing myself. That night, I cleaned the spray paint off the wall. Not because I wanted to erase what happened, but because I refused to let betrayal decorate my home. A few days later, my sister called from rehab. He's just a kid, she whispered through tears. I closed my eyes. So was I answered. I told her about the forged signatures, the pawn shops, the calculated lies, and then I said something I'd never admitted out loud before. You always call me when everything falls apart, but what happens when I'm the one drowning? Silence. Then finally, quietly, I'm sorry. It was the first real apology I'd heard in years. But apologies don't rebuild trust overnight. Actions do. So instead of reopening my door to Rico, I opened it to someone else. Her name was Amara, 17, quiet, aging out of foster care, no family support, no stable home. But unlike Rico, she didn't walk into my apartment expecting something. She walked in grateful for everything. Within weeks, she had a job, a routine, and plans for community college. She cooked dinner sometimes, helped with groceries, sat across from me in comfortable silence while we watched old movies. One night she asked softly, "Why are you helping me?" I thought about it for a long moment before answering. "Because someone once helped me," I said, and I never forgot what that meant. Slowly, my apartment stopped feeling violated. It started feeling safe again. Then one afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. "We found some of your belongings at a pawn shop." By noon, I was standing under flickering neon lights, staring through a glass display case at pieces of my life. My grandmother's ring, my camera, my uncle's watch. The pawn shop manager handed over transaction logs and security footage after I showed him the paperwork. Turns out, Rico had been doing this everywhere. Different shops, different stories, same pattern. That's when I realized something painful. He hadn't just stolen things. He'd learned how to weaponize sympathy. But instead of collapsing under that realization, I decided to do something different. I told the story. Not online for revenge, not to humiliate him, but to speak honestly about what happens when kindness gets exploited. A local podcast invited me on to talk about boundaries, second chances, and rebuilding after betrayal. I never mentioned Rico's name. I just told the truth. And apparently, he listened. A week later, I got a message. "Aunt N, I know the episode was about me. I'm sorry. I finally heard myself through your eyes." I didn't answer, because apologies sound different when they arrive after consequences. Still, something about the message stayed with me. Not guilt, not hope, just curiosity. Then came another surprise. The podcast producer called me. "Rico showed up at the youth center," she said. "He asked how he could volunteer." That caught me off guard, not because I trusted him, but because for the first time, he was trying to give instead of take. So I sent him one final message. "If you're serious about changing, meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring work clothes." The next morning, we stood side by side, painting the graffiti-covered wall behind a youth shelter. No speeches, no emotional reunion, just work. For hours, we painted in silence. Finally, Rico spoke. "I thought you'd chase after me," he admitted quietly. I kept rolling paint across the wall. "I don't chase people who destroy me," I said. He nodded like he finally understood, and that became the beginning. Not forgiveness, not trust, accountability. Week after week, he kept showing up. He got a delivery job, started paying back the stolen money little by little, volunteered at the shelter after shifts ended. One evening, he handed me a notebook. Inside were pages of delivery logs, tip amounts, repayment records, and handwritten totals. At the bottom of the final page, he'd written, "Debt paid, $0 remaining. Trust, still in progress." I stared at those words longer than I expected. Because healing isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like consistency. Sometimes redemption looks like a teenager riding a bike through rain because he promised himself he'd stop running. Months later, I attended his GED graduation quietly from the back row. When they called his name, he looked around nervously until his eyes found mine. And for the first time since everything happened, I saw something different in him. Not entitlement, not manipulation, humility. After the ceremony, he walked over carefully and handed me one final thing, a spray paint cap painted gold. "I'm not pretending I didn't do it," he said softly. "I just don't want that moment to define me forever." I looked at him for a long time before answering. "You broke something important," I said, but you stayed long enough to help rebuild it. His eyes filled instantly, and finally, quietly, honestly, I forgave him. Not because he was family, not because time passed, but because he changed. Real change. The kind you can measure in effort, responsibility, and showing up when nobody forces you to. Today, Amara is in college on a scholarship. Rico still works deliveries while taking classes. And me? I finally understand something I wish I'd learned years ago. Love is not endless sacrifice. Love needs boundaries. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is close the door. But sometimes, the most powerful thing is leaving it cracked open just enough for someone willing to rebuild themselves to walk back through honestly. Because in the end, Rico didn't repay me with money. He repaid me with every day he chose not to run anymore.